Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and Mike Jones is here too. Aren't you glad?
Hey,
He says I'm a goofball. Uh, on tonight's news show, we're going to start off with Diane Mackin. At the top of the news, Diane. She is a public figure that looms large in social media. We cover social media. We cover the radio, also they don't do much. We cover the Daily Courier. We cover what's happening on the television stations. And in addition, we dedicate some time occasionally to the county commissioners. So the reason that Diane Mackin comes up, let me say her name a couple more times, is that we're bringing you some real good news this evening, and we're all over the story about the fact that the commissioners have said all along, oh, this levy, it's all about public safety. Why? It's about getting patrols out there. Why? It's public safety, public safety, public safety. Well, then that fails. And now when the commissioners are given yet another chance to fund somewhere between 2 and 5 or maybe even 10 patrol deputies, they don't want to do it. And they could easily do it with funds that have been sitting in a big account that they haven't been talking about. Oh, really? So what happened was I posted the first video you're going to see tonight. I posted that in social media for everybody else to see. And I pointed out that the Courier's coverage on this important subject is reflected in one of the main headlines they've got on the front page above the fold. College dedicates new flagpole.
yeah, there's some
And
news for you.
and Diane's reaction was to this complete lack of coverage of anything that's happening in our community. It might as well be dog licks ice cream cone. College dedicates new flagpole. Her reaction was, well, and she's a big, strong levy pusher. There are many stories in this lifetime that may be worth taking. Diane, this is an important story. Are you for law enforcement or not? I am. So is Mike. We just wanted to be sure the money's going to the right place. So, Mike, what's your reaction to all that?
Well,
You have half an hour.
okay. Well, there's other stuff there also in the news that is big news that isn't being reported or that is being reported to the exclusion of this big story about law enforcement funding. And apparently they're rebranding the Grants Pass, and they're going to get rid of the "It's the Climate" sign. What's wrong with these people? And do you know, Dale, there's a new brand, and you know what the new brand is?
No, what is it?
It's Live Rouge.
No, no, come on. It has to be Rogue. It's got to be Rogue.
Come on, you wouldn't even let me go 5 seconds with that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sure that it's Live Rogue, but for crying out loud, Live Rouge. It makes about as much sense. Live Rogue, okay, maybe that means something to people around here, but it's the climate. Everybody knows what that means.
It's above the street. But even that story, I don't think that story was in today's Courier. I didn't see it in maybe tomorrow's Courier because
Right.
that's really important news. Okay.
Yes. Well, and that's a good point. You know what? The Grants Pass Courier, Daily Courier, is not even reporting that story, which I think is bigger than the new flagpole at the community college. That's just me.
You think?
I might be wrong about that.
It
But,
cost us $200,000 to get this new idea.
I heard it was 300,000.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's above 50 cents, which is
It
about
was a
what it's
lot.
worth.
Yeah. Yes. I'm with you on that one.
Bears
And
live
you know what?
young. Bears live young, Mike.
It's
Do they?
Live Rouge. Live Rouge. What are they going to? Every Saturday night, we're going to have makeup demonstrations on the corner of 6th and G. Live Rouge.
So the lead story today is Yeah, it's an important story, despite the fact that the Courier doesn't see it, and the TV stations are not picking up on it. And why? So I called one of the news directors. Said, "You're not picking up on this." Well, we usually wait for the Courier. What? You're going to wait forever, buddy. They don't know anything about this story. Okay, so here I am. Yeah, Dale Matthews speaking again. Blah blah blah. Here I am trying to explain for everybody, and also facing the commissioners and saying, here's what you're doing and what you're not doing. Go ahead, Mike.
Grants pass. Since these two new commissioners came in, there's been a running joke. Oh, citizens say we've got money stockpiled somewhere. No, we don't. Those stupid citizens. Oh, they say that we've got money that's just sitting there not doing anything. We're just holding it aside instead of spending it on this emergency situation of law enforcement. Well, turns out that's all true. Turns out that we've been lied to the whole time. That money is there. One of the estimates, one of the things you said, was $8 million. And the only person on the budget committee that wasn't dyed-in-the-wool pro-levy suggested we take first $1 million and then $500,000, 1/16 of these funds that are available for emergency striping and stuff like that. Well, there's just as many deaths from going over a guardrail as there are from homicides. Ridiculous. And these roads are in very good condition according to the county. So when you say, well, law enforcement's our #1 priority, it's a lie, because you're not spending the money on that. Even the pro-levy people should be getting together with the anti-levy people and saying, hey, you could be spending this money on this. It's an emergency. Remember? Nope, you don't remember. You wouldn't get your 10% skim off the top of this money, would you? Or it wouldn't punish the voters if you said yes to this, would it? So you have a choice. You can live up to the things you've been promising us all along, or you can stand convicted in the court of public opinion. Once again, you are not going to take the pressure off. That's 5 patrol deputies, at least. And the money could be spent for this, but you're not going to release it. I just can't see how anybody in the county can look at this and say, well, that seems reasonable. It's not reasonable. So you make a little sacrifice. Well, we'd like to have lots more money. It's renewed by the state. So you pick an amount that will be renewed next year. Oh, that's not enough because it's living paycheck to paycheck. Welcome to our world, Simon Hare. We live paycheck to paycheck. And we want law enforcement. I've always wanted that. But I wanted to be sure that it stayed out of your hands. And here's a chance to do that. But you're not going to approve it, are you? You really should say yes to this. But you won't.
So, Mike,
Yeah.
why won't they do this?
You know what, and that is really a good question. I was kind of pondering that during the video clip, and it's clear that there's some ulterior motive here that they're not fully expressing. You know, and you mentioned a couple of the possibilities there. One is that they're wanting to punish people. 2, they don't get their 10% if they send that over there. Another couple of possible motives were mentioned when talking to people after the meeting. One is that, you know, the Public Works Fund there, they get to hand out cushy contracts to friends of theirs, and you know, there's a little favor thing going on there, and they might not be able to do that if that money was you know, or a portion of that money was taken out. There would probably be a closer eye on that little fund. So, you know, and you start grasping at straws, and conspiracy theories begin to form. You know, this is what happens when you have a situation like this, where they won't really say I mean, they'll tell you something like, well, if we did that, the roads would fall apart in 1 year, and they're in really great condition now, and which of course doesn't hold any water because of the fact that we know that even taking $1 million out of this fund is not going to deplete it. It's not going to make it so that they cannot do maintenance next year.
And this is the reserve fund.
So.
The amount
Right.
for daily fixing or whatever it is that they do, that wouldn't be affected by this. This is the
No, it
reserve fund that they're
Right.
not spending. And they
Right.
can, and they did it 2 years ago. This would not affect the daily maintenance of the roads at all. And even if it did, you're right. So it's a year. They've been saying all along that the most important thing that government does is protect its citizens. Okay, I believe that. And then it turns out that given an opportunity to protect the citizens, they don't want to do it.
Yes. No, there's something. You know what? I'd love to crawl inside their little brains and figure this out. Now, right before the weekly business session began, we saw the normal deputy who is sometimes there to monitor to make sure that the crazies don't attack the commissioners.
Like usual. Yeah.
Yeah, like usual. And he showed up, and then the sheriff was there, and then he went up and had a little powwow with them at the dais there, and we assumed maybe he might get up and talk about the road dollar situation, but he didn't, and then we had to catch up with him afterwards. And luckily, I had my cell phone with me, and I asked him a question about the road dollar situation. What I said, the budget committee just met, and the using road dollars was proposed, and can I get a reaction to that? And here's what he said.
There's validity on both sides of that in the other counties in that they do have a bigger source to fund law enforcement. However, there's also validity to the fact that if I'm guaranteed or given a certain amount of money, that it's finite. And, what deputies are going to want to come here knowing that in a year, I don't know if there's any money for them. So there's arguments on both sides that are both valid. Really, it's up to, and gosh, if there was a disaster, we're in trouble. So a natural disaster, yet at the same time, public safety are obviously hurting right now. So, I leave it up to the board to make a decision on whether that's good for the county or bad for the county.
Right.
I know the last time road funds, and actually I don't think it was road funds, I think it was contingency funds that were provided the previous sheriff. There's a ramp up time, and the 9 months that Commissioner Hare mentioned in there is true. If I can obtain lateral officers, it's much less than that.
Now, when you say lateral officers, you mean officers that are ready to hit the road. They
Correct.
Don't need the training; they've already had it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by lateral. So they can be up and running in a couple months, literally. But if you talk about hiring a brand new recruit, a brand new officer, it's a year or if not even more. There's the whole process of hiring is long. You go for a 4-month academy, then you go for a 3 to 4 month field training and evaluation. There's 8 right there. That doesn't cover the process of hiring, being the background for the officer that has to be conducted, the whole process of searching them out. So it's long. And
but don't we have some of those guys around because of, we used to have a much larger force, and now there's been layoffs. Is the training, does it need to be updated that often that we don't have a supply of officers that are ready to hit the road?
Well, they've gone elsewhere is the issue.
Yeah.
And the pool is not that great. The lateral officers that we're talking about are officers that would want to come from another organization they're currently working for. Well, anticipate or imagine that too many would want to do that based on our funding and where we're at, knowing that they're going to maybe relocate their families or things like that, and then not have a job in a year.
Now, Mike, afterwards, I joined you guys because I was still in the meeting, okay? And one of the things that he said, not on tape, great, but you'll just have to take our word for it. Take Mike's word for it. He said, well, we have been offered by some lateral officers from other places. And you said, well, I wish he had said that on tape.
Yeah.
So you brought it up. These people are available.
Right. That was actually in another discussion with a few people that had also been in discussion with him. So it's like about third hand. However, I think it's fairly credible. And this person who had spoken to him before had told us that he was going there with the intention of telling them, listen, I have some lateral officers in hand, and that I would like to use some of those dollars or whatever. And then he went up and talked to them at the dais, and I think after this conversation that you just saw, we pretty much can figure out how that went.
Here's a couple interesting things. One is, okay, be ready for a test here, Mike. When the sheriff or anybody goes up and talks to the county commissioners before the meeting, and they're in a quorum, and they're talking about county business, legal or illegal? Mike?
Illegal.
That's right. It's illegal to do that. We would like to know what you're saying to them, Sheriff. The sheriff wasn't being illegal, but the commissioners were. They were breaking the law. And it's a perfect example. Do not talk about this important issue. It doesn't matter if it's important or not. It's against the law, and you've sworn to uphold the law. Do not talk about this important issue and make some kind of, well, it's not back room, but it's certainly not heard by anybody. What is it that they could have said to this guy to convince him not to talk?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. Listen, you know what? There's so many instances where I would love to have been a fly on the wall. Because
we shouldn't have to be. Sorry.
Yes, I understand.
It's necessary to do that.
It's kind of the point of that law, But wow.
This is why I'm death on this law. You're doing backroom deals, even if it's in front of it. We can't hear what you're saying.
We do kind of know that whatever was said. Keith Heck was out in the room, so it was Simon and Cheryl that were talking to him. So whatever came to him that made him change his mind, if our previous information is correct, then it was said to him by either Cheryl or Simon or both.
Well, here's the other thing too. Okay, now I like this guy. I know there's people who don't like him now. Joseph Rice, he's a terrible guy, the former sheriff. I want my job back, get rid of this guy, whatever it is that they're saying, okay? I get that. But I do kind of like the guy. I think that he's made some mistakes, okay? And one of them he made during this discussion, he was starting off when I arrived, he was starting off on this, well, it takes a long time. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, even if it did, what you do is you take the money, you cut it in half. What am I, a Rhodes Scholar on this? Rhodes Scholar, haha. And you cut it in half. You spend your time training these guys, 9 months, whatever. Then they have a baby, and then they work for 3 months of that year. And because you cut it in half, now you've got them for the 9 months of training, 3 months plus a year. What would you do with that? He said, well, I'd love to have 2.5. I'd love to have 2 deputies. Well, there you go. It's like, oh, yeah. What do you mean, well, yeah, come on, Sheriff. Why are you thinking inside of a box? It said us this is only at the $500,000 level. Even if you had to start all over again, which apparently he doesn't have to do. So come on now, you guys. Put on your thinking cap.
There's always a possibility that this law it can be extended that allows them to use road dollars for deputies. I think it got passed in 2012, and here it is ending in the beginning of 2016. So lobby the legislature and say, hey, listen, we need this. We don't have any other we don't have any other contingencies here. Let's kick this off for another 2 or 4 years, and then they could have some surety as to that these people that they hire are going to stick around for a little while.
But first, they have to have the ability to think their way out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah, you know what? I really wish that we could attribute that situation to what you just mentioned. I tend to think that it's more like they don't want anything good to happen behind having not passed the levy or something along those lines. I mean, we're stuck with having to speculate about this because we don't have solid information. We're going to have to invent some mechanical flies with little cameras and recording devices.
I don't curse, but they need to be able to think their way out of this. They need to be able to. I'm not going to curse anyway. They need to be able to stick up for the word that they said. And as I mentioned to him, look, this money is available. You could do this. This is what you said you were interested in. This is what the pro-levy people who are, crowding into every social forum, you're not interested. Yes, we are. And so that's why we're leading the parade and saying, give the money to the sheriff. But really, they have to do some thinking about this. And divide it in half. Well, yes. So you give him, the 500,000 or the million, which is 1/8. This is 1/16. It's going to be replaced. It's already in the bank. They promised us. They swore to us. They laughed at us when they said, oh, they're always saying there's money in some kind of cash over here. There's not. Yes, there is. You lied to us. There is money there, and it's for public safety. It's for road patrols. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, but you can't tell people stuff like that and expect them to vote yes on a levy.
But it's a lie. It's a lie. It's alive. Yeah.
Yes.
What is it Frankenstein said? It's a lie. No, I think he said it's alive. But I mean, that's okay. So our ads this week are all about this.
Yes.
And so go ahead and play them back to back, Mike.
This is Dale Matthews, editor of badcounty.com. We found out something we didn't know about the county commissioners last week. They've been keeping a huge, unknown surplus account. That's not what they told us when they were pushing for the levy.
Yeah, and I, for one, am really mad about it.
No, he's just mad in general. Just, this kind of mad. But okay. Play the next one, please.
Okay.
This is Dale Matthews, editor of badcounty.com. We discovered the commissioners have been keeping a huge, unknown surplus account. 1/16 of that would fund 5 patrol deputies for a year. And that could be done every year.
Now, look, we put these ads out. We don't get funding from any place except for the Bank of Mike and the Bank of Dale. There's no funding coming from
we're overdrawn.
Anybody.
We're overdrawn.
Right. There's no funding coming from anybody. So why do we do this? So that people are informed about, because the Courier doesn't do the news. Okay? What was it? College dedicates new flagpole. What? Okay, so we want people to know the news. There's some value in that. We now have 200 instant subscribers. When we tell the news, we put it out there, boom, 200 people get it immediately. You can subscribe if you want to. It's a non-commercial. We have...
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, Dale, because at some point here, I'm going to make a little one of these screen capture videos that shows you how to go to YouTube, subscribe, and then make a notation that allows you to get an instant notification anytime a video gets posted. That's valuable for people who want to be on the cutting edge of the news and don't want to have to wait until Dale sends out an email with a bunch of videos in it. You'll get it instantaneously, and you'll be on the cutting edge.
You'll be one of the cool kids. Look, I used to do that every day, and I would transcribe everything. Can you imagine? Now it turns out when we've got 30 stories a week, I can't transcribe all that kind of stuff. I mean, it would slow me down to a crawl. So what I do is, to the 500 plus email subscribers that we have, there's no cost. Okay, there's no money in this. Believe me, there's no money. They get a weekly update where they could click on any story that they want, including all of the live shows that we do. We have over 1,000 videos that we've done, and half of them are just these characters, the commissioners, just talking. It's not even with any commentary. We do the commentary so that you understand the context from our point of view. Hey, it's our show. About what the heck's going on. And we try to get that out there to everybody. It's a wildly successful program now, and the reason that we do it is for the same reason that Mike was out there and he was shooting this with his cell phone. Many times, our friends, these are our friends, they'll be in the middle of some kind of, and somebody will come up and they'll say something, wow, that's pretty amazing. Did they think to record it? Really? I mean, I love them. But they didn't record it. And I say, why didn't you record it? Oh, well, did you have yourself? Well, yeah, I had my. Why did you record it?
Part of the problem is a lot of the people that I know that even have, fairly sophisticated cell phones, they don't know how to use them. They don't know how to make it take a video.
Even when they do, they're not thinking about it. See, here's the thing that we've noticed that just drives me slightly wild. Okay, woo, let's see Dale go wild. Part of it is that they'll come back later and I'll say, hey, I saw you talking. Oh, yeah. Well, what happened? Well, he said this and this. It's like, what? He admitted that he was one of the people that killed Kennedy. Why didn't you didn't record it? Were you going to keep that to yourself? What? Yes. Now you know the news, but nobody else knows the news. So you're informed for a few instances, for a few minutes today. But what about everybody else? This is what's wrong with the commissioners. They got this information and they're not sharing it with anybody. Hey, tell everybody.
Where do you get off?
I love them, but they're lunkheads sometimes. They're just not thinking, hey, we could be telling everybody now. That's increasing. Things are increasing. And we do get more tips from people. Sometimes we have to shake it out of them, our own friends, but we do get this. And and everything I just told you is off the record. Stop it. Okay, so we're going to try to tell you what's happening. And if you're not coming here, then you're stuck with Kjo, who is not reporting any of this either.
And listen, I want to tell everybody that after we're done with these ads, we have one more piece with the sheriff where he answers the accusation that he made an inappropriate joke about the Oath Keepers and going up there and engaging in a paintball war. So
let's just go straight to that, Mike. What I'm saying on these ads is good, but it's a variation on a theme. Let's just go straight to that if we can.
Okay. All right. See, now you guys you're going to get it right now. Okay. So here we go.
Joseph Rice was in here last week saying that that you had made a comment that we're going to have a paintball fight up at the Sugar Pine Mine.
I had about an hour-long conversation with Mr. Rice yesterday. It was a great conversation. He was upset at that. It was basically just it was a joke. People thought it was funny. They laughed. But he was upset. I apologized to him for the comment. It is what it is. People can blow things up all they want. I absolutely respect what the Oath Keepers did, the stance they took up there at the Sugar Pine Mine. I respect his stance on the miners and where they are, and I'm actually working with legal counsel now together to make sure that there's issues that we can address in the future when this kind of stuff comes down. The nice thing,
right? Because as it relates to that, I mean, the charter does say certain things about what local authorities should be supportive of, and I'm assuming that your conversations with Wally are kind of along those lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's a learning process for all of us. You know, for me, I'm still new. I'm still gearing up and still ramping up, and I'm learning more about what BLM has done in the past and are doing now. And so I'm going to start addressing some of those issues. I guess just to put it plainly, I'm concerned. My job is to be the conservator of peace. That's my job, and that's the role I took in the Sugar Pine Mine situation. I was on the phone daily with BLM. I was on the phone daily with the FBI. I was on the phone very often with Mr. Backus and Mr. Rice to assure the safety of everybody. And I think we were able to negotiate and speed up the process, because I think oftentimes you'll find that the BLM will be non-communicative, and I'm finding that out. And now in my new role in dealing with them. So again, myself and Mr. Hicks, the legal counsel, are going to start addressing some of these non-communicative issues. I know he worked very hard to get them to respond to him on several things, and I want to partner with him to make sure that these type of things don't happen again.
Right. Any chance in the future you might take a more openly supportive role of the due process rights of citizens of the county, as opposed to, I mean, this time it was sort of like you were staying back and watching what happens behind the scenes, but maybe more.
What's interesting about that is that I didn't stay back and watch. I was an active participant in making sure that the rights to due process were served.
That may have been the case, but that wasn't openly apparent to people, and maybe making that process a little bit more transparent.
Are you asking me to be a better politician?
No, what I'm saying is that perhaps if you are that active behind the scenes in the future, maybe you will make that more visible to people that you are, because it seemed like you were sort of missing in action.
Well, if the people want me to stand up and say I'm solving this, I'm solving this, I'm solving this, I can do that. But I'm going to do my job. I understand that people are going to want maybe more of this and more of that, but I'm going to do the right thing at the end of the day, hopefully every time. And that's my focus. I come from the belief, or the foundation, that I need to make the right decisions. The right decisions are often the hard decisions, not the political ones. Politics of this job is the one thing that I don't like. I'm not going to pander to people. I'm not going to respond to silly comments and things like that. It's a serious business. If another situation like that arises, I can handle it. I can handle it differently. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. The way I handled it personally, and from the standpoint of the office and being a conservator of the peace, in my opinion, was spot on. I don't want. If I take sides, per se, I have beliefs, mind you, but if I take sides in a situation like that where it's my job to negotiate a medium and to also make sure that the rights of the miners is upheld, then that's what I got to do. If I all of a sudden side with the BLM, all the miners are going to be upset, and I'm not going to be any good in my job, in my role, which is to negotiate resolve, and which is exactly what happened. They got their due process, and I think they got it faster than they would have if miners stood by themselves. So I applaud the Oath Keepers for stepping up and taking a stance. I think they. I don't know that it had to be that big of an operation, but nonetheless, who am I to say? I'm not an expert in dealing with the BLM yet. Maybe they know something I don't know, but I think there will be future situations. Maybe I'll handle it a little bit differently. I may seem like that I'm just in the background or whatnot, but I'm doing my job.
Well, Mike, he's sure that he did everything just right.
Yeah, he's a little bit defensive on that. And he started out with it, and he's explaining the situation there, but you can tell that he's a little sensitive about a few of those points in there.
You think?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And are there bunches of people that are coming forward and saying, "Yeah, Sheriff, you did it just right"? Really?
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, and you can tell also that. If I were to guess, I would say that he did have some problems with their methods there. Otherwise he wouldn't have mentioned, well, I don't know if it would have had to have been that big a thing. Well, clearly there's some consideration there that perhaps he thought it was too big a deal. And
I want to point something out about Mike. Don't listen, Mike.
Okay.
So when we went to that meeting of the mining committee, we got the only footage out there any place of the sheriff talking about what was going on with the miners. And then the sheriff followed that up with a canned speech that he made from a script kind of thing, that he said, here's my opinion about the levy. There really wasn't much useful information in that, and plus the fact that it was scripted. Then we got this footage. These are the only times, you think about it, these are the only times that you're hearing from the sheriff on just about anything for 3 weeks plus. So if you want to hear what newsmakers are saying, there's really only one place to come, buddy. And that's thanks to Mike Jones out there with a little it was a little bit, bouncing around, but
it was worse before I put a little image stabilization on it. It was like,
it's highly edited. That's nice.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
Mike can't talk and shoot a camera at the same time. It's just can't do it. He starts talking,
and I got to tell you. Listen. After the end of this clip, the sheriff says, "Well, is that enough of a bite? Now you guys can take this and cut it up and make it say all kinds of stuff." And I'm trying to be as fair as possible. That was the entire thing, and I think the sheriff can tell you that was it. That was the whole thing in context there. So there was generally nothing taken out of that. And
I was in the meeting, and I was making sure I was shooting everything that the commissioners had to say, right down to the last little nugget of Chamber of Commerce type announcements. They don't like talking about controversial subjects at all, and they mentioned again in today's weekly business session they'd really rather that people in the audience didn't talk about the Sunny Valley gravel project. Well, we really don't need to be talking about that. Hey, it's our 3 minutes. I think we'll talk about what we want to talk about.
Yeah, and they zinged right through that pretty fast here today. They just boom, boom, boom. And there wasn't anybody there I think people pretty much understood the process because they had sort of tabled it until the next week, and it was because
first Keith Heck said what it wasn't about. This isn't about any kind of thing about the legality of it, except it's the very first thing that he said during the meeting to Wally Hicks, the legal counsel. Well, tell us about the legal part of this. Can we proceed? Look, Keith, have you forgotten? You just told us on Kjo that it's nothing to do with that. And then he turns around and it's everything to do with that. He's lying to you. I mean, there's no two ways about that.
The sequence, it was out of sequence. They didn't understand the process when it comes to LUBA. Apparently, they need to have this ordinance passed before they can consider it, and then they can say yay or nay after all that's been done. And
okay, all right. It was brought up. There was a guy that came up from the Sunny Valley group that said, well, what about this? And as it turns out, that was 100% correct what he said. But then Wally Hicks called. Sorry, this is, inside politics. What do you expect on the show? So Wally Hicks called up to Salem, and he talked to those guys, and they said, really, you're doing this without passing the ordinance first? Oh, Wally Hicks didn't know. Okay, so, and the commissioners didn't know. So, but the guy's objection was legit. He was talking about how LUBA, when they say, Land Use Board of Appeals, when they say they put, when you're in the appeal process, he can't just start digging right away. Now, we've heard the commissioner say, and we played the video for you. Video, that means nothing, Mr. Matthews. Okay, yeah, right. That he could not do it and he could do it. He could start right away and he can't start away. Yes, he can, and no, he can't. Okay. We heard this from Wally Hicks. Wally, I love you, but what are you talking about, bud? Okay, so then he gets up and he explains this. So Andres Bleck gets up. He's the guy that they're complaining about. Well, I just feel bad that, it's taking so long. Plus, this guy brought up this totally inaccurate. It wasn't totally inaccurate. It was not totally inaccurate. So that was interesting. But there was another interesting thing that happened during this, and that was that somebody else got up from the audience and said, do you guys know that there's this case that there's some legislation that might pass at 3 o'clock today, and you might want to do something about that? Well, Cheryl Walker says, yeah, I heard about that last night at 8 o'clock. Okay, that's too late to put it on the agenda. Mm-hmm. So what they did is instead they talked about it other, which if they have an other subject, they don't have to tell you what it's about. Really? Okay, so the commissioners are discussing this thing during other. Then it was suggested, well, let's write a letter. Now, wait a minute. You're going to write a letter, but you haven't told anybody that you're thinking of writing a letter, so there's no one that can come up and say, I don't think writing that letter is a good idea. You're representing the entire county. How about having some other people get up and say their opinion? Because otherwise, why are you meeting in public? Why not just do it? So they decide, based on something that wasn't announced to anybody, only if this is important to you, maybe it's not. Well, I love it when they do that. Okay, then you get the kind of government you deserve. Unfortunately, so do I. And so then they decide, well, you know what we're going to do? Even Wally Hicks gets up and he says, you haven't told anybody that you were going to talk about this. Yes, but that, Simon here, well, we can do that kind of stuff, and I know what the law is. He's got a lawyer there, elected by us, and he's saying, guys, really, you should think about this because you didn't tell anybody about it. Other people might want to come in and say, don't write that letter, and here's 11 reasons why. Or they might say, please do write the letter. But you need to tell the people what's happening before you decide to write a letter purportedly to represent the entire county. But they decided they were going to ignore their legal counsel, and they were going to do it anyway. And he says, well, now, wait a minute. Are you going to get together in a quorum and discuss this outside of the public? No. What was their answer? What are they going to do, Mike? This is a bad precedent. What did they decide they were going to do?
I don't know. I may have been outside at this time.
He was out getting the actual interesting news. I was in there watching the minutia. What they're going to do is, I talked to Wally after the meeting about this, they're going to put that letter that's going to be written up by one of them, by Simon Hare, they're going to put it in the read file, which means that they go whenever they want to and they read it and they say, oh, yes, I vote yes. And then they sign it. Oh, yes, I vote yes, too. So I went up to legal counsel afterwards and said, Wally, why don't they just put all of their materials for voting in the read file?
Yes.
That way, they never need to discuss it in public. They don't need to be on the record about it. They can make up their own mind. They might even chat with each other, although they're not supposed to. You know that they do. I know we're breaking the law, and I don't care. Remember that? 3 times that guy said that. That was Keith Hick. And so why don't they just, and Wally's like, Wally. And I said, Wally, if they just put everything in the read file, then they don't have to bother with this pesky stuff about people saying they don't like this. Well, yeah, Wally. And he told them, he said, this is up to you. If you really want to do it,
yes.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind, what do they say? Somebody who represents themselves as a fool for a client. Yes.
It's a disturbing trend that they have, that when they don't want to talk about something in public, they just don't. And so they put it in the read file and then just come by and they vote while they're signing it.
That's interesting.
So if you want any input at all about these characters and the way they purport to represent you.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe that Sandy Casanelli may have something to say about that next time around.
She couldn't be there today because she was at a funeral of a friend. Okay.
Yep.
Well, so were we, but in a slightly different way.